in the kingdom of Jinshi, where ancient martial arts were revered as the pinnacle of cultural achievement. The wind carried whispers of change. It was a society that balanced precariously between honoring traditions and embracing the future, a tightrope walk that had lasted for centuries. The kingdom's capital, with its soaring pagodas and stone-paved streets, served as the epicenter of this delicate dance between old and new. Princess Li Fang stood at the edge of the Sword Academy's grand training yard, her silken robes fluttering in the autumn breeze. At 25, she had already achieved what many considered impossible, becoming the youngest sword mistress in the Academy's 300-year history. Her reputation preceded her, talented, beautiful, and insufferably arrogant. "The ceremony begins in 10 minutes, Princess," said her attendant, bowing deeply. Li Fang barely acknowledged him, her attention fixed on the scroll in her hands, an ancient text describing forgotten martial techniques. She scoffed, rolling it closed with a dismissive flick of her wrist. "More nonsense from the fossil collectors," she muttered. "Take this back to the archives where it belongs, with the dust and cobwebs." The attendant hesitated. "But Princess, this is Master Han Yuan's personal collection. It's on loan for today's ceremony only." The name caused her expression to harden. Master Han Yuan, the so-called living fossil, as the media had dubbed him. At 83, he had withdrawn from public life decades ago, becoming something of a myth in martial circles. His grandson, Lieutenant Jing An, now served as the public face of their family's martial arts legacy. "Even better," Li Fang smiled coldly. "Perhaps it's time someone told the truth about these outdated techniques." The opening ceremony of the new academic year at the Imperial Sword Academy was always a grand affair. Thousands gathered in the central courtyard, students, masters, royal officials, and media representatives. Today was particularly special as the Academy celebrated its tercentenary. Li Fang took her place on the raised platform alongside other dignitaries. Her eyes found Lieutenant Jing An standing stoically at the edge of the stage, 30 years old, with a stern face that rarely smiled. He was the perfect embodiment of traditional martial discipline, everything Li Fang had come to despise. The Academy Chancellor approached the podium. "Today, we honor 300 years of martial excellence, our traditions." "If I may, Chancellor," Li Fang interrupted, rising from her seat with graceful confidence. The crowd hushed. It was unheard of to interrupt the Chancellor, but Li Fang's royal status afforded her privileges others didn't dare claim. "Princess Li Fang wishes to address the assembly," the Chancellor announced, unable to refuse her. She walked to the center of the stage, commanding attention with every step. Her voice, clear and strong, carried across the courtyard. "For 3 centuries, this institution has trained the kingdom's finest warriors. But today, I wish to speak about our future, not just our past." She paused, her gaze sweeping over the audience. "The world evolves, yet some among us cling to antiquated methods, techniques that may have worked against arrows but fail against modern challenges." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Li Fang continued, her confidence growing. "I've recently reviewed some materials from Master Han Yuan's collection." She unrolled the ancient scroll she had brought with her. "These so-called supreme techniques are nothing more than elaborate dances, impractical in real combat." Lieutenant Jing An stepped forward, his face tightening with controlled anger. "Princess, you dishonor my grandfather and centuries of wisdom." "I speak only the truth, Lieutenant," Li Fang replied coolly. "Your grandfather may have been formidable in his day, but that day has long passed. These techniques are fossils, and those who cling to them are living fossils themselves." Laughter erupted from sections of the audience, particularly the younger students and visiting foreign dignitaries. Li Fang smiled, savoring the moment. "The Emperor has entrusted me with modernizing our martial traditions. Let us honor the past by building upon it, not by becoming prisoners to it. As applause rose from her supporters, Li Fang noticed Jing An's stoic expression crack slightly, revealing a flash of something dangerous in his eyes. But the lieutenant merely bowed stiffly and stepped back. In the crowd, a thin man with sharp features scribbled furiously in his notebook. Wang Zhong, the kingdom's most controversial journalist, sensed a story that would sell thousands of papers. Living fossil versus royal innovator, he muttered to himself, already composing the headline. Perfect. Far from the capital, nestled in the misty peaks of Hua Mountain, an elderly man sat in silent meditation beneath a massive ancient pine. Snow dusted his shoulders and unmoving form, yet he showed no signs of discomfort. Master Han Yuan's eyes opened slowly, gazing at the valley below as if seeing beyond the physical landscape. "Master," called a voice from the stone path leading to his meditation spot. Han Yuan didn't turn. "You've returned earlier than expected, Jing An." His grandson climbed the final steps and knelt respectfully. "Forgive the interruption, Master. There was an incident at the academy ceremony." Only then did Han Yuan turn to face him, his weathered face revealing nothing. "Tell me." As Jing An recounted Princess Li Fang's public mockery, the old master's expression remained unchanged, though something flickered deep within his eyes, not anger, but something more complex. "She called your techniques fossils, Master. She laughed at your life's work and encouraged others to do the same." Han Yuan was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm as mountain water. "And this troubles you?" "It should trouble anyone who respects martial traditions," Jing An replied, his contained fury evident in the tension of his shoulders. "The princess has challenged more than just an old man's pride," Han Yuan observed. "She has challenged the very foundation of our martial heritage." "What shall we do, Master?" "She has issued a formal challenge, a demonstration match at the royal arena in 7 days." Han Yuan rose slowly, his movements belying his age with their fluid grace. "We will do nothing, for now." He walked toward his simple stone dwelling. "The princess seeks attention. Denying her, that is the first lesson she must learn." "But Master..." "Return to the capital, Jing An. Tell them I am too old, too frail to accept such a challenge." A faint smile crossed the old master's lips. "Let us see how the princess responds when her challenge meets only silence." Jing An bowed, recognizing the strategy in his grandfather's words. "As you wish, Master." When the lieutenant had departed, Han Yuan entered his dwelling and approached a wooden chest in the corner. Opening it revealed not treasures but a simple white robe, the traditional garment of a martial arts grandmaster, unworn for decades. His gnarled fingers traced the fabric. "So the time has come at last," he murmured, "not as I expected, but perhaps as it should be." Back in the capital, Princess Li Fang paced her private training chamber, irritation evident in every step. "He refuses," she demanded, glaring at the royal messenger who had just delivered Lieutenant Jing An's response. "The lieutenant says Master Han Yuan respectfully declines your challenge. Princess, he says his grandfather is in seclusion and too advanced in years for public demonstrations." Li Fang laughed bitterly. "Of course he refuses. He knows his outdated techniques would be exposed." She dismissed the messenger with a wave. "Prepare an announcement. Since Master Han Yuan is unwilling to defend his martial philosophy, I will demonstrate the superiority of modern methods at the royal arena as scheduled. All are welcome to witness the future of our martial traditions." That evening, the royal palace buzzed with talk of the confrontation. In the emperor's private garden, Li Fang knelt before her father, who studied her with concerned eyes. "You've created quite a stir, daughter," Emperor Wei Jin said, his voice gentle but carrying undertones of disapproval. "The academy needs modernization, Father, we cannot compete internationally while clinging to ancient methods. The emperor sighed. There is wisdom in tradition. Li Fang, Master Han Yuan's techniques may seem outdated to you, but they have protected our kingdom for generations. Times change, Father. What worked against swords fails against new threats. Perhaps, he studied her face, but I wonder if this is truly about martial philosophy or something more personal. Li Fang's eyes flickered away momentarily. I don't know what you mean. Your mother would have counseled patience and respect. Remember that innovation without foundation is like a tree without roots, impressive until the first strong wind. Li Fang bowed, hiding the flash of pain that crossed her face at the mention of her late mother. I will consider your words, Father. But as she left the garden, her resolve only hardened. She would prove herself right, not just to her father or the kingdom, but to herself. In his cramped office at the Capital Herald, Wang Zhong crafted his latest article with meticulous care. Royal challenge meets ancient silence. Princess Li Fang's bold confrontation with traditional martial arts has escalated as the legendary Master Han Yuan, dubbed the living fossil by modern martial critics, refuses to emerge from his mountain seclusion to defend his legacy. Is this the twilight of traditional martial arts in Jin Shi, or is the ancient master plotting a response that will shake the martial world? Wang Zhong leaned back, satisfied with his work. The article would further inflame public interest in the conflict, exactly as he intended. Over the years, he had built his reputation on controversy, and this feud between royal innovation and traditional mastery was perfect fodder. Add an image of the princess in her competition attire, he instructed his assistant, and find any archive photo we have of Master Han Yuan, no matter how old. Sir, his assistant ventured cautiously, isn't this framing rather provocative? The princess never actually called Master Han a fossil directly. Wang Zhong smiled thinly. News isn't just about reporting facts, boy. It's about capturing the essence of conflict. Trust me, both the princess and the old master will thank me eventually. I'm making them legends. The assistant seemed unconvinced but followed his instructions. By morning, the story would be in every home in the capital, and by evening, throughout the kingdom. The days leading up to the demonstration became increasingly tense. Public opinion divided sharply. Younger citizens and those with international connections largely supported Li Fang's push for modernization, while traditionalists rallied behind the absent Master Han Yuan. The royal arena sold out within hours of tickets becoming available. Lieutenant Jing An found himself besieged by reporters each time he appeared in public. He maintained a dignified silence, refusing to be drawn into the media frenzy, but privately, he worried. His grandfather's instructions were clear, yet the public mockery of their family's martial legacy continued unabated. 5 days before the demonstration, a heavy snowstorm descended upon the kingdom. At the royal training grounds, Li Fang practiced despite the conditions, her movements slicing through the falling snow with deadly precision. New techniques from international masters had been incorporated into her style, faster, more direct, optimized for efficiency rather than the flowing movements of traditional forms. Your Highness, called her training partner, a foreign instructor from the Western kingdoms. Perhaps we should continue indoors. No, Li Fang replied, her breath visible in the cold air. Adversity strengthens preparation. In combat, we don't choose our conditions. She continued her drills as snow accumulated around her, each movement perfected through thousands of repetitions. But deep within, doubt flickered occasionally, not about her abilities, but about the absence of her opponent. She had expected resistance, confrontation, the satisfaction of direct victory. Instead, she faced only silence, and somehow that proved more unsettling than any challenge. On Hua Mountain, Master Han Yuan also trained in the snowstorm, but with very different methods. He stood motionless in the heart of the blizzard, eyes closed, feeling every snowflake that touched his skin. Occasionally, his hand would move so quickly it seemed to disappear, to catch a single flake before it landed. The void fist requires emptiness before power, he murmured to himself, a teaching he had repeated for decades. One must become nothing to control everything. Inside his dwelling, a small fire crackled, casting shadows on the white Grandmaster robe now laid out carefully on his bed. Decision had replaced contemplation in the old master's eyes. The morning of the demonstration arrived with clear skies and unprecedented excitement. The royal arena filled to capacity 3 hours before the scheduled event. Nobles, foreign dignitaries, martial artists, and ordinary citizens packed the stands, their collective anticipation creating an almost electric atmosphere. Princess Li Feng arrived in a procession of royal guards, her competition attire a striking blend of traditional elements and modern materials, symbolic of her martial philosophy. Her crown, a delicate arrangement of precious metals and jewels, caught the sunlight as she entered the arena to thunderous applause. Lieutenant Jing An sat quietly in the section reserved for honored guests, his expression revealing nothing of his thoughts. Beside him were empty seats, one for his absent grandfather, the other mysteriously reserved by royal command. Emperor Wei Jin entered last, taking his place in the royal box. The crowd rose in respect, then hushed as he raised his hand to signal the beginning of the ceremony. Today, the emperor began, we witness not just a demonstration of skill, but a dialogue between past and future. May wisdom guide both. Li Feng stepped to the center of the arena and bowed to her father. Then, turning to face the audience, she began her demonstration. Her movements were spectacular, combining traditional forms with innovations that showcased speed and power. The crowd gasped at particularly difficult sequences, especially when she incorporated techniques clearly influenced by foreign martial styles. For 30 minutes, she commanded the arena, her performance flawless. As she concluded, she stood confidently before the audience, barely breathing hard despite the intensive demonstration. What you have witnessed, she announced, is the evolution of our martial traditions, respectful of our past, but not imprisoned by it. She paused, her gaze sweeping the arena. I had hoped Master Han Yuan would be here to demonstrate his traditional approach, allowing all to see the clear advantages of modernization. His absence speaks volumes about the inability of outdated methods to meet today's challenges. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Li Feng continued, her voice growing stronger. Therefore, I issue one final challenge. If any practitioner of the traditional school believes in the effectiveness of those ancient techniques, let them step forward now. The arena fell silent. Li Feng waited, her smile growing as seconds stretched into a full minute with no response. As I thought, she said finally, the age of... I will accept your challenge. The voice, though not loud, carried throughout the arena with startling clarity. All eyes turned to its source, Lieutenant Jing An, now standing. Lieutenant, Li Feng acknowledged with a slight inclination of her head, you are not your grandfather. No, Jing An agreed. I am not. He walked toward the arena floor, his movements measured and calm. But I stand as a representative of his teachings and our traditions. The crowd stirred with renewed interest as Jing An took position opposite the princess. Unlike Li Feng's stylized competition attire, he wore simple training clothes, the mark of a practitioner concerned with function over appearance. The match began cautiously, both combatants circling, assessing. Li Feng struck first, her movements swift and direct. Jing An defended, his style more circular, redirecting rather than opposing force directly. For several minutes, they exchanged techniques, neither gaining clear advantage. Then Li Fang increased her intensity, unleashing combinations that had overwhelmed previous opponents. Jing An found himself giving ground, forced into defensive postures by the princess's aggressive approach. "Your grandfather's techniques fail you, Lieutenant," Li Fang taunted as she pressed her advantage, "just as they would fail our kingdom in true conflict." Jing An made no reply, conserving his energy for defense, but a slight shift in his expression, barely perceptible, suggested her words had struck home. In the royal box, Emperor Wei Jin watched with growing concern. What had begun as a philosophical demonstration was evolving into something more personal, more dangerous. He leaned toward his advisor. "Be prepared to end this if necessary." The match escalated further. Li Fang, sensing victory, executed a complex sequence culminating in a strike that broke through Jing An's guard, sending him stumbling backward. The crowd gasped as the lieutenant fell to one knee. Li Fang paused, offering the traditional opportunity to yield. Instead, Jing An rose slowly, blood trickling from a small cut above his eye. "You fight well, princess," he acknowledged, "but you misunderstand the nature of traditional training. It is not about winning quickly. It is about enduring, adapting, surviving." "Pretty words to disguise imminent defeat," Li Fang replied, resuming her attack with even greater intensity. What followed shocked the audience. Jing An, rather than continuing to defend, simply stood his ground, absorbing punishing blows without resistance. Li Fang's confusion was evident. This violated every principle of combat strategy. "What are you doing?" she demanded between strikes. "Fight back." Jing An's voice remained calm despite the punishment he endured. "I am fighting, princess. I am fighting pride with humility, aggression with patience, force with understanding." Frustration flashed across Li Fang's face. She redoubled her efforts, her techniques becoming less controlled, more fueled by emotion than strategy. Finally, with a decisive movement, she executed a spinning kick that struck Jing An's chest squarely, sending him crashing to the ground. The arena fell silent as the lieutenant lay motionless. Li Fang stood over him, her crown gleaming in the sunlight, victory evident in her posture. "Thus falls tradition before progress," she announced, raising her hand to claim victory. At that precise moment, something impossible happened. A gentle breeze, inexplicable within the enclosed arena, ruffled Li Fang's hair. In the same instant, a barely visible movement occurred near her crown, so subtle that only those closest to the arena floor perceived it. A tiny sound, like crystal touching crystal, echoed in the silence. Then, before the astonished eyes of thousands, the central jewel in Li Fang's crown cracked perfectly down the middle and fell, landing in her open palm. Confusion crossed her face as she stared at the broken jewel, then shock as she realized what had happened. Her eyes darted around the arena, seeking the source of this impossible occurrence. Standing at the arena entrance was an elderly man in a simple white robe. Master Han Yuan had emerged from decades of seclusion, his presence commanding attention without a single word spoken. The crowd's reaction was immediate: gasps, whispers, and then a wave of reverential silence as the legendary master walked slowly toward the center of the arena. His movements, though unhurried, contained a fluid grace that belied his advanced age. Li Fang found herself taking an involuntary step backward as Han Yuan approached. The old master stopped beside his grandson, helping Jing An to his feet with surprising strength. Only then did he turn his attention to the princess. For a long moment, Master Han Yuan simply looked at Li Fang, his expression neither angry nor judgmental, merely observant, as if seeing through her royal trappings to something beneath. "You did not break my grandson's spirit," the old master finally said, his voice carrying easily despite its softness. "And I did not break your crown, princess. It was broken by your own force meeting empty space." Li Fang found her voice. "What trickery is this? You weren't even near me." "The technique you mocked as a fossil," Han Yuan explained calmly. "The Void Fist, mastery of energy projection beyond physical contact. What appears empty may contain the greatest power." The princess looked down at the broken jewel in her palm, then at the old master. Understanding slowly dawned in her eyes. He could have directed that force anywhere, at any target. He had chosen the crown jewel as a message, not as an attack. "You could have humiliated me completely," she said quietly, the realization shaking her confidence. "Humiliation teaches nothing of value," Han Yuan replied, "but perhaps this demonstration offers something worth learning." The significance of the moment was not lost on the audience. The jewel that had broken was not merely decorative. It was an imperial heirloom, said to contain ancient texts microfilmed and preserved within its structure, now exposed. The tiny scrolls within the broken jewel were visible to those closest to the arena floor. Wang Zhong, who had positioned himself at the edge of the arena for the best view, suddenly understood the magnitude of what he was witnessing. This wasn't merely a contest between old and new. It was a pivotal moment in the kingdom's martial history. Emperor Wei Jin rose from his seat, his expression solemn as he descended to the arena floor. The crowd bowed as he approached the three figures at the center, his daughter, the lieutenant, and the legendary master. "Master Han Yuan," the emperor acknowledged with a respectful bow of his own, an extraordinary gesture from the kingdom's ruler. "Your return honors us all." Han Yuan returned the bow. "The honor is mine, your majesty." The emperor turned to his daughter, whose composure had cracked along with her crown jewel. "Li Fang, it seems there is more to learn from our traditions than you recognized." Li Fang knelt, offering the broken jewel to her father. "I have been arrogant. Father, forgive me." Instead of taking the jewel, Emperor Wei Jin closed his daughter's fingers around it. "Keep it as a reminder, daughter. True strength comes from understanding, not domination." He then addressed the silent crowd. "Today we have witnessed not the triumph of old over new or new over old, but a demonstration of what happens when we fail to respect the foundations upon which progress must be built." As the imperial party prepared to leave the arena, Master Han Yuan approached Princess Li Fang privately. "Your techniques show great promise," he said quietly, "but they lack the spiritual foundation that gives purpose to power." Li Fang met his gaze directly. "And you would teach this to someone who mocked you publicly?" "The best student is often one who has questioned everything." Han Yuan replied with a slight smile. "Come to Hua Mountain when you are ready to learn, rather than prove." With those words, the old master departed, leaving Li Fang with much to contemplate. The aftermath of the royal arena demonstration rippled through the kingdom like waves from a stone cast in still water. Wang Zhong's headline the next day read simply, "Silence Speaks, Ancient Master Returns, Tradition and Innovation at Crossroads." For once, the controversial journalist found himself reporting rather than inflaming, recognizing that the story itself carried power beyond any embellishment he could provide. In the days that followed, Princess Li Fang withdrew from public appearances, sequestering herself in the royal library. Attendants reported that she requested every available text on traditional martial philosophy, particularly those relating to Master Han Yuan's lineage. Lieutenant Jing An recovered quickly from his injuries, resuming his duties with the quiet dignity that characterized him. When questioned about the demonstration, he offered only brief responses. "My grandfather's wisdom speaks for itself." In the imperial palace, Emperor Wei Jin convened his advisors to discuss the implications of Master Han Yuan's return. The broken crown jewel, now carefully preserved in a crystal container, sat at the center of the council table. The contents of this jewel, the emperor explained, are ancient techniques thought lost for centuries. Techniques that Master Han Yuan has apparently preserved through direct transmission. His chief advisor leaned forward. Your Majesty, this changes our understanding of our martial heritage. If these techniques can be verified and integrated with modern methods. Precisely, the emperor nodded. Not replacement of tradition with innovation, but evolution through respect for foundations. 2 weeks after the demonstration, Princess Li Fang stood at the base of Hua Mountain, gazing up at the mist-shrouded peaks. She had come alone, without royal guards or attendants, a journey unprecedented in her privileged life. The climb was arduous. Paths that seemed clear from a distance revealed themselves as treacherous up close. By midday, her elegant traveling clothes were soiled, her hands scraped from catching herself on rocky outcroppings. Yet she continued upward, driven by something stronger than pride now, a genuine desire to understand. Near sunset, she reached a plateau where a simple stone dwelling stood beside an ancient pine. Master Han Yuan sat in meditation under the tree, apparently unaware of her approach. Li Fang hesitated, uncertain of the protocol for addressing a martial grandmaster outside of formal settings. The path continues beyond this point, Han Yuan said without opening his eyes, but few find it without guidance. Li Fang knelt respectfully several paces away. I have come seeking such guidance, Master Han Yuan. The old master opened his eyes, studying her with the same penetrating gaze she remembered from the arena. Why? Because I was wrong, she admitted, the words difficult but necessary. Not about the need for evolution in our martial traditions, but about dismissing the foundation those traditions provide. Han Yuan nodded slowly, an honest beginning. He rose with fluid grace. Come, night approaches, and the mountain grows cold. Inside the stone dwelling, Li Fang was struck by the austere simplicity. No decorations adorned the walls. No luxuries softened the space. A small fire provided the only warmth and light. You live like this by choice? She asked, unable to conceal her surprise. Simplicity clarifies purpose, Han Yuan replied, preparing tea with methodical movements. When we remove distractions, truth becomes more visible. They sat in silence as the tea steeped. Finally, Han Yuan spoke again. The technique that broke your crown jewel, the Void Fist, is not merely a physical method. It represents a philosophy. True power comes not from what we add, but from what we remove. Like unnecessary pride, Li Fang suggested quietly. A smile touched the old master's lips, a promising observation. He poured the tea, offering her a simple clay cup. Now, tell me what you truly seek on this mountain. Li Fang considered her answer carefully. I seek balance, master, between honoring our past and creating our future, between the power I've developed and the wisdom to use it properly. And if finding such balance requires unlearning much of what you believe about yourself, then I am prepared for that challenge, she replied with newfound humility. Han Yuan studied her for a long moment. We begin tomorrow at dawn. Sleep now. The first lessons are often the most difficult. True to his word, training began before sunrise. Li Fang was awakened by Jing An, who had arrived during the night. His previous antagonism had been replaced by professional detachment. He would be her training partner and secondary instructor. The initial lessons confused Li Fang. Rather than teaching new techniques, Master Han Yuan focused on fundamentals she had learned as a child. Basic stances, simple movements, breathing exercises. I've mastered these years ago, she protested on the third day, frustration evident in her voice. You learned them, Han Yuan corrected. Mastery is something else entirely. He demonstrated the difference by performing the same basic movement she had just completed. Though seemingly identical, his execution contained a quality she couldn't quite identify, a completeness, an integration of body and intent that transformed the simple motion into something profound. Weeks passed. The royal court sent messengers inquiring about the princess's extended absence, but she sent them back with assurances of her well-being and requests for more time. Gradually, her frustration gave way to genuine curiosity, then to dedicated study. The breakthrough came unexpectedly, 2 months into her training. While practicing a sequence she had repeated thousands of times, Li Fang suddenly experienced a shift in perception, as if seeing the movement from both inside and outside simultaneously. The sensation lasted only seconds, but it left her breathless. "You felt it," Han Yuan observed, nodding with approval, "the gate between technique and principle." It was like seeing beneath the surface of water. Li Fang attempted to explain, everything connected, moving together. "This is the beginning of true understanding," the old master confirmed, "not the accumulation of techniques, but the recognition of the principles that unite them all." From that point, Li Fang's training accelerated. Han Yuan began introducing concepts from the ancient texts, some familiar from her royal education, others apparently lost to all but his lineage. Jing An participated fully now, his initial reserve replaced by genuine collaborative effort. The princess discovered that many of her innovative techniques had roots in traditional methods, merely approached from different angles. Conversely, some of the ancient techniques contained principles so advanced they seemed almost futuristic in their application. "Why keep these methods hidden?" she asked one evening, after mastering a particularly effective defensive sequence. "They could benefit the entire kingdom." "Some knowledge requires proper foundation," Han Yuan explained. "Released prematurely, it becomes dangerous rather than beneficial. Each generation must prove itself worthy of the next layer of understanding." "And you believe I'm proving worthy?" Li Fang asked, humbled by the implication. The old master's eyes crinkled slightly. "You climb the mountain one step at a time, princess, but your steps grow more certain each day." 6 months into Li Fang's training, an unexpected visitor arrived at the mountain retreat. Wang Zhong, the journalist who had so enthusiastically chronicled the conflict between tradition and innovation, had made the difficult journey to Hua Mountain alone. Jing An intercepted him before he reached the training plateau. "This is private property, journalist. Your sensationalism is not welcome here." Wang Zhong bowed respectfully. "I come not as a journalist today, Lieutenant, but as a messenger. The capital faces crisis. Foreign powers threaten our borders, citing martial provocations as justification." Jing An's expression hardened. "What provocations?" "None from our side," Wang Zhong explained, "but they claim our recent martial demonstrations, specifically the princess's public challenge and its outcome, represent aggressive intent." "Absurd," Jing An dismissed, "a transparent pretext for their territorial ambitions." "Perhaps," Wang Zhong acknowledged, "but the emperor requests Master Han Yuan's counsel, and—" he hesitated, "the princess's return." When informed of the situation, Master Han Yuan remained characteristically calm. "The wheel turns," he observed cryptically. "What began as philosophical conflict evolves into physical challenge." Li Fang, however, reacted with immediate concern. "I must return to the capital. My father needs me." "Yes," Han Yuan agreed, "but not as you arrived here. The princess who descended the mountain must be wiser than the one who climbed it." The next morning, the unlikely trio, princess, lieutenant, and journalist, began their journey back to the capital. Master Han Yuan remained behind, offering only one enigmatic instruction: remember that the strongest defense reveals itself only when truly needed. The capital had changed during Li Feng's absence. Military personnel patrolled the streets, and a tension hung in the air that hadn't existed before. At the palace gates, the princess was met by her father's advisors, their faces grave. "Your Highness," the chief advisor bowed deeply, "your return brings hope in difficult times." "Brief me on the situation," Li Feng commanded, her royal authority seamlessly reassumed despite months of humble training. The situation was indeed serious. 3 neighboring kingdoms had formed an alliance, positioning troops along Jin Shi's borders. Their diplomatic communications cited martial aggression and cultural supremacy as concerns, demanding concessions including the transfer of certain border territories and changes to international trade agreements. Emperor Wei Jin received his daughter in his private chambers, embracing her with genuine emotion. "You've changed," he observed, studying her face. "Your eyes see differently now." "I've learned much, Father," Li Feng acknowledged, "though perhaps too late to prevent this crisis I helped create." "Not of your creation alone," the emperor corrected. "These kingdoms have long sought advantage over us. Your challenge merely provided convenient justification." He paused. "What counsel did Master Han Yuan offer?" "He remains on the mountain, but sent his wisdom. The strongest defense reveals itself only when truly needed." The emperor nodded thoughtfully. Cryptic as always. His expression grew serious. "The alliance demands a demonstration of our martial philosophy, supposedly to assess our aggressive intent. In reality, they seek to evaluate our military capabilities." "A trap," Li Feng concluded. "If we appear too strong, they claim justification for preemptive action. Too weak, and they attack regardless." "Precisely." The emperor sighed heavily. "They specifically request your participation. Daughter, your public challenge created this situation. They believe your response will reveal our true position." Li Feng straightened, resolution replacing concern. "Then I shall give them a demonstration they will not expect." The international demonstration was scheduled for 3 days later in the same royal arena where Li Feng had challenged tradition months before. This time, however, the audience consisted primarily of foreign dignitaries and military observers, with limited access for Jin Shu citizens. Lieutenant Jing An coordinated security, personally vetting every person entering the arena. Wang Zhong, surprisingly, had been requested to provide official documentation of the event, his controversial reputation apparently well known even beyond Jin Shi's borders. "An interesting reversal of fortune," the journalist commented to Jing An during preparations. "Months ago, I helped inflame conflict between you and the princess. Now I record your unified response to external threats." "History rarely moves in straight lines," Jing An replied. "Be certain your documentation captures truth this time, not merely sensational headlines." The demonstration began with formal introductions. Representatives from each of the 3 allied kingdoms presented their credentials, their military attire and decorations clearly chosen to project strength rather than diplomatic courtesy. Princess Li Feng entered the arena last, her appearance causing visible surprise among the foreign delegates. Gone were the elaborate royal garments and crown she had worn during her previous demonstration. Instead, she wore the simple white training clothes of a martial student, with only a small imperial insignia identifying her royal status. The lead foreign representative, General Zhao from the Eastern Kingdom, stepped forward. "Princess Li Feng, we have heard much of your innovative martial techniques. Today's demonstration will help us understand whether Jin Shi's martial evolution represents a threat to regional stability." Li Feng bowed respectfully, deeper than protocol required for her royal status. "Honorable representatives, I thank you for this opportunity to correct misunderstandings. What I present today is not merely my own innovation, but the culmination of both traditional wisdom and modern adaptation. She moved to the center of the arena, closed her eyes briefly, then began her demonstration. The foreign observers leaned forward, anticipating the aggressive, power-focused techniques they had heard described in reports. Instead, Li Fang performed the most basic form in Jin Shu's martial tradition, a sequence taught to children beginning their training. Her execution, however, contained a quality that even untrained observers could recognize as extraordinary. Each movement, though simple, carried perfect balance between power and restraint, force and flexibility. Confusion spread among the foreign delegates. General Zhao whispered to his advisors, clearly displeased with this unexpected approach. Li Fang continued, gradually transitioning to more advanced traditional forms, yet she carefully avoided any techniques that could be interpreted as aggressively oriented, focusing instead on defensive movements, circular redirections, and positions that emphasized stability rather than attack. Finally, she concluded with a sequence that none of the observers had seen before, a flowing integration of ancient principles and modern adaptations that seemed to embody both heritage and innovation simultaneously. When she finished, the arena remained silent. Li Fang approached the foreign representatives and bowed once more. "What you have witnessed," she explained, "is the true martial philosophy of Jin Shi. We honor tradition not as a fossil to be preserved unchanged, but as a living foundation upon which we build our future. We develop strength not for aggression, but for preservation of peace and protection of our people." General Zhao's expression remained skeptical. "Pretty words and elegant movements, Princess, but they do not address our concerns about Jin Shi's martial intentions." "Perhaps," Li Fang acknowledged, "because those concerns are based on misunderstanding." She gestured toward Lieutenant Jing An, who approached carrying a wooden box. Opening it, Li Fang revealed the broken crown jewel, now reforged with visible seams where the fragments had been rejoined. "This represents our approach. When broken, we do not discard tradition, we restore it, learning from the breaking, stronger at the mended places." She offered the box to General Zhao. "Examine it closely, General. You will find ancient texts preserved within, techniques developed not for conquest, but for defense of homeland and preservation of peace." The general hesitated, then took the box. As he studied the reforged jewel and the microscopic texts visible within its structure, his expression gradually shifted from suspicion to grudging respect. "These are defensive applications," he admitted finally, "not the aggressive techniques our intelligence suggested." "Your intelligence was incomplete," Li Fang explained, "as was my own understanding when I issued my challenge months ago. True martial wisdom lies not in opposition between old and new, but in their harmonious integration." The foreign representatives conferred quietly among themselves. Finally, General Zhao returned the box to Li Fang. "We will report what we have witnessed today to our respective sovereigns," he announced formally. "Perhaps there is room for diplomatic resolution after all." As the foreign delegation departed, Emperor Wei Jin approached his daughter, pride evident in his expression. "You have transformed potential conflict into opportunity for peace," he observed. "Master Han Yuan taught you well." "He taught me to see beyond surface appearances," Li Fang replied. "The true battle was never between tradition and innovation, but between understanding and ignorance." In the week that followed, diplomatic communications replaced military posturing. The alliance of kingdoms, while not abandoning all their demands, showed new willingness to negotiate rather than threaten. Crisis, while not entirely averted, had been transformed into opportunity for genuine dialogue. 1 month after the international demonstration, Princess Li Fang once again climbed Hua Mountain. This time, however, she was accompanied by her father and a small group of selected martial instructors from the academy. Master Han Yuan received them at his simple dwelling, seemingly unsurprised by the imperial visit. The emperor knelt respectfully before the old master, an extraordinary reversal of usual protocol that signified the depth of his gratitude. "Master Han Yuan," the emperor began, "your wisdom, transmitted through my daughter, has preserved peace for our kingdom. How may we honor your contribution?" The old master smiled slightly. "By continuing what the princess has begun, the true integration of foundation and innovation." He turned to Li Fang. "You return changed from when you first climbed this mountain." "I return with clearer vision," she acknowledged, "and with a proposal, if you will consider it." At her gesture, one of the attendants unrolled architectural plans, showing a new structure to be built adjacent to the Imperial Academy, a center dedicated to the preservation and evolution of martial traditions. "The Han Yuan Institute for Martial Philosophy," Li Fang explained, "where traditional wisdom and innovative application are studied as complementary aspects of a unified whole. Will you guide its formation, Master?" The old master studied the plans thoughtfully. "Not as director," he decided finally. "My place remains on this mountain, but as advisor, yes." He looked at Li Fang with approval. "With you as its first director, Princess, the bridge between worlds must be built from both sides." 6 months later, the Han Yuan Institute opened its doors to students from throughout the kingdom and beyond. The opening ceremony, unlike the confrontational demonstration that had preceded it, emphasized harmony between preservation and evolution. Lieutenant Jing An, now promoted to captain and appointed head of practical instruction, stood beside Princess Li Fang as they welcomed the first class of students. Among them were promising young martial artists, established masters seeking deeper understanding, and even several representatives from the previously hostile neighboring kingdoms. "From conflict comes opportunity," Li Fang observed as they watched the diverse group assemble. "Had I not been so arrogant, had your grandfather not been so wise in his response." "The wheel turns as it must," Jing An replied, echoing his grandfather's philosophy. "Our task is to learn from each rotation." In his office at the Capital Herald, Wang Zhong put the finishing touches on his latest article, a comprehensive account of the Institute's founding and its implications for regional stability. Unlike his previous sensationalist approach, this piece emphasized factual reporting and thoughtful analysis. His editor reviewed the draft with surprise. "No controversy, no inflammatory language. Who are you, and what have you done with Wang Zhong?" The journalist smiled. "Let's just say I've learned something about the value of solid foundations. Sometimes the truth needs no embellishment to be powerful." On Hua Mountain, Master Han Yuan sat in meditation beneath his ancient pine. Though physically distant from the institute that bore his name, his influence permeated its philosophy and practice. Occasionally, Princess Li Fang would make the journey to seek his counsel on particularly challenging questions of integration between traditional and modern approaches. Today, however, he sat alone, watching clouds form and dissolve against the distant horizon. The breeze carried whispers of change throughout the kingdom, not the disruptive force it might have been, but a harmonious evolution guided by wisdom from both past and present. "The strongest things bend," he murmured to himself, an ancient teaching that had proven its value once again, "and the wisest things grow." In the capital, as evening fell, Princess Li Fang completed her day's work at the institute and paused at the window of her office. The reforged crown jewel sat in a simple display case on her desk, a constant reminder of both her former arrogance and her current responsibility. Looking out over the city where tradition and innovation now flowed together more harmoniously than before, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From mockery of a living fossil to deep respect for timeless wisdom, from blind pursuit of the new to thoughtful integration of past and future. The broken crown had become the foundation for something far more valuable than royal authority, a bridge between generations, philosophies, and kingdoms, not perfect, still evolving, but built on mutual respect rather than dismissive arrogance. As darkness settled over the capital, lights began to illuminate the streets, some traditional lanterns, others modern innovations, their combined glow creating something more beautiful than either could achieve alone.